What is up, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at installing the Rough Country Black Series Slimline lights. Going to be installing them into my bumper there and there. I was trying to find some cheaper lights, but everything else I could find seemed like some super sketchy Chinese stuff. Like the numbers they would say for the lumens were like 50,000 or something insane that I knew wasn't legit. So I knew these would work. They're a little more pricey than I'd hoped for, but oh well. But today we are going to try and install them. Alrighty, so everything that came in the box, the lights, 2 lights. From looking at them on the website, these are honestly a little bit smaller than I thought they would be, but I don't really care. Not too worried about it. Wiring harness, the legs to mount them. You're supposed to mount them like this. What I'm actually going to try and do is that. You'll see why later. The instructions, which because this involves electricity, I may actually have to use, which is very unfortunate, and a little hardware bag. So not a whole lot to it. The hard part is going to be mounting them for me, I would say. All right, so I ended up having to go about it a little different way than I had planned, using some different tools, but there are my notches. Now to drill the holes and get ready to actually mount it up. So I went ahead, got these drilled in, and I decided to go ahead and mount them. No sense showing you that. So here's how it looks, just a little stud sticking out, not too bad. And they fit pretty well. I had to adjust some of the holes I put in the bracket to get the height just right, because it was sitting just a little bit too high in the hole. So I just ground that out and it works pretty well. Got both sides lined up pretty well. Take a look underneath here, show you what I did. So I'm not mounting it on top or any external fixture or whatever. I wanted it to sit optimally. It would sit perfectly flush with the face, but aside from making a whole new bracket and being kind of complicated, whatever, this worked pretty well where it sits just behind it, using the existing bracket. So here, the leads are not the best, I know, but I actually turned the bracket sideways, as I said earlier, from the way it was intended. This hole was supposed to go to the light, and then this hole right here was supposed to go to wherever you're mounting it to. Well, what I did is this short side I put to the light to pull it closer against the face of the bumper, and then I didn't, because this curves down like that, this hole is below the center line of the light. I didn't want to have my holes staggered from the center line. I wanted to keep it clean and keep it all the same, so I just measured out and made a new hole right there. I know, sorry, the light sucks, I know, but anyway, I just made a new hole there to keep it all in the center line. But pretty easy to do. The material was soft enough I was able to drill straight through it, pretty straightforward. So yeah, it is possible to mount them forward facing. So in time we'll see how well these sit in place. I've heard that similar light designs will tilt down over time if you hit a bump, but the mounts, the end of the light where the screw goes in, is made out of metal, so I was able to get it pretty tight. It feels pretty solid. I am going to be painting this whole, taking everything off and painting it here soon, so I didn't, but in the future I will end up red Loctiting all those screws to try and prevent any tilting. But anyway, the structure is there. Now time for the wiring. So on the instructions, this actually looks like it's pretty straightforward. So the wires I had hanging out of the lights, whatever, we saw that earlier, those will plug into these. This here is, well, that we just screw in anywhere just to hold it up. It says in the instructions to mount it vertically, so I'll have to sit like this somehow. And then my fuse there, which I don't need to touch, it's all ready to go, and the wires coming out to the battery. So hook these to the battery, hook this anywhere, hook those up to the lights, and then it was hooked up. I went ahead and disconnected it just for less crap flopping around, but there's the switch. So it should be pretty straightforward. I honestly think, since all of that is pretty much plug and play, I honestly think the hardest part is going to be getting that switch into the cab, getting to the firewall somehow. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm told there is a way to get it in. That's pretty simple, but we'll make it work, whatever we have to do. Okay, so I'm here in the engine bay looking for a good place to mount this. And one thing I do see right away that I don't like with this is it says to mount it vertically. Okay, cool, simple enough. This just pops out. So if you just drive around in the city all the time, it's probably not an issue, but I'm on country roads, rough roads, stuff that vibrates the hell out of it. I'm afraid of this shaking loose, so I actually think I'm going to throw some electrical tape on here to give that a better shot of holding together and also help keep some of the water out. All right, everything is in place, so let me show you how I hooked it up. So this the box, whatever this piece was called, I don't remember. I don't know if it needs to be grounded, if it needs to be to metal, or if it can go to plastic. I wasn't sure, so I just erred on the side of maybe it's a ground, whatever, I'll hook it to metal. So I loosened this battery cable here, the battery ground, got it out of the way so that I could then tuck that box into it, onto, it's not the frame, but wherever this upper bar here. Got that wired in, just to run a self-tapper, just shoved it in, and it's kind of wedged between the battery and the rest of the frame, so it shouldn't go anywhere. The battery, I unhooked it, simple enough. I cleaned off all the terminals best I could since I had it off. Make sure I've got a good connection, good to go. The two wires that run down to the lights, I ran behind my fuse box, down underneath some supports, trying to basically funnel as close as I can to the headlights. Not because I want it next to the headlights, but because I don't want it near the radiator or the engine, anything hot, anything that's moving, whatever. Just trying to avoid that warm area as best as I can within it, with all of my wires. Oh man. There they come down there, headlights there-ish, runs up under the bumper. Simple enough. I'll need to find some way to tie these up, but pretty simple, just plugged them in. Easy enough, no actual wiring, just plug and go. Oh man, too fat for this. Alrighty, and then for the actual switch control, that wire, again coming from this little box, ran, and I was told that there was a hole somewhere in the firewall that it would be easy to fish this through. So, let's see, right there, super hard to see, but anyway, I just ran it down and it goes in that little hole that you can't see down there. You can see it better from the inside. Anyway, there's a few holes here that looks like it can go in, but that one was pretty easy to reach, and so I just went for that one. Now where I have an actual light, you can see it a little bit better. So there's already a wire coming through that hole, through that little boot there, that seals off the cabin from the engine bay. And mine is actually kind of semi-rotted and torn, so the hole was extra big, so I was able to fish this wire through pretty easy. Just stuck a pair of pliers in it, forced it through, went pretty well. And here's my switch. Once I got that wire through, I hooked it back up there, just plugged it in. Simple on-off switch. There you can see off is lit up all the time. Click. And lights are on. It is obviously completely bright in here, and it's also bright outside. It's going to be bright for several hours, so I'll have to show you the lights later. But just looking at the wall there, you can definitely see the difference, even in a perfectly well-lit building. So they're pretty bright. So here in a couple hours, I'll pull it outside once it gets dark and show you what it looks like for real. And then obviously I've got all these wires laying everywhere. Obviously the next step is going to be to just zip tie them, rubber bands, screws, whatever you got to do to get them out of the way. That's going to be very independent on your vehicle, what lights you're running, where you're hooking them up to, all that. So I'm not going to bother showing you. That's going to be specific to you. You're going to have to figure it out, but it's also super easy. So that is the next step for me, but I'm not going to bother showing you that. So anyway, I'll see you in a bit. Alrighty, so here we are. It's finally dark out. Obviously, the iPhone camera doesn't pick up a light quite as well as it actually does. I mean, if you were here in the pickup with me, you'd be able to see a little bit better than what the camera actually shows, but this should be enough to get the point across. So here are my low beams. They're high beams. So just brings the beam up a little bit. And there we are with the 2 rough country lights on. So let me change my angle here a little bit. So not a ton of throw, but they are very wide and they really do light up the trees and the area, just some of the periphery area around light it up pretty well, which, like I said, the camera doesn't pick it up quite as well as it is. These actually are pretty bright. Here, let me do this. That's with my headlights off. That's just the 2 rough country lights, which, let's see, is pretty similar to my low beams. So, I mean, those alone are essentially low beams. So just that much layer, an extra layer, essentially, you know, low, high, and then extra high by adding this in. So I'd say they work pretty well. I'm happy with it. So the one thing, which I don't know if I mentioned before, this light is always on, which I think I did say before, but what I did not say is that I have a relative who leaves the country for 6 months at a time, oftentimes, and when he comes back, normally his vehicle takes right off. Well, one day he had one of those, or one time when he left, he had one of those outlet phone chargers that has a light like that, just a little light. And when he came back, his vehicle was completely dead, did nothing. So for me, this is my daily, it's not an issue. But if you've got, you know, some fun motor vehicle you only take out every few months, whatever, that light may cause an issue with that. You may go to start it, what would be an otherwise reliable vehicle to may be dead. So you may, if you plan on leaving it for a long time, you may want to disconnect that wire. The way I have it set, the clip for it is just down there. I can unhook it pretty easy, but just something to keep in mind. But for something you've got hooked onto a daily though, works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. So easy enough installation, I must say. I'm pretty pleased with these, so would recommend.